Here with me in the studio here in DC is Fawn Weaver. Welcome to the
Thank you
show.
for having me.
It's so nice to meet you. You look
Oh,
beautiful.
thank you. It's nice to meet you. I feel like it's a prerequisite to have cool glasses in DC. Like everybody in DC has really cool glasses.
That's the thing. Glasses and shoes. It's like I think you gotta have the glasses together, you gotta have the shoes together.
Uh-huh.
It's the whole thing, you gotta figure that out. But you look amazing.
Thank you.
And so you're on a book tour right now.
I am. Kicks off literally right now.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So you are the CEO of Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey, but take me back a little bit. Like, what inspired you to launch the brand?
Well, it's a couple of different parts. So originally I came to the story itself, and the story is such a remarkable story. And I don't know if you remember in 2016 when the story first came out, and the headline was Jack Daniels embraces a hidden ingredient help from a slave. Well, Black Twitter, love y'all, God bless y'all. They decided that the storyline was different than what was actually in
That's
the
right.
article.
And it usually is. And it usually is.
and it, and so the story itself was basically revealing that oral history down in Lynchburg, what had been kept alive, was that an formerly enslaved man by the name of Nearest Green is who taught Jack Daniel and who was his mentor. However, the story since the 70s had been that a white preacher and distiller taught him. But it was actually Jack and Nearest on the same man's property, both working for the same man. And so Black Twitter got a hold of it. And then God bless the press for then picking up the storyline from Black Twitter. Is like, is nobody going to check this story? Nobody. Nobody's going to check it. I ordered Jack Daniel's Legacy. It was written in it was published in 1967. So height of the civil rights era. So if you think about it, MLK was assassinated in Memphis, right? And in 68, Detroit riots were in 67. 67, also you see the KKK rising up in Pulaski, Tennessee. So in Lynchburg, Tennessee, you've got this hotbed of all this stuff going on in the country and around Lynchburg, Tennessee. And yet, this biography, when it's written, everyone who's interviewed are the people who were closest to Jack, his family, the people who took over his distillery, his friends, his colleagues, all the rest of that. And Nearest and his boys were mentioned more times than Jack Daniel's own family. So now we have two things. We have the original image. It's on the cover of the book, Love and Whiskey. So we have the original image that brought me to this story, which is you have Jack Daniel. I didn't drink Jack, but I knew what Jack looked like. I think we all know what Jack looked like. So you have Jack Daniel, and then to the right of him was a Black man. But I looked further to find the original image. And it wasn't just that he was to the right of the Black man. That image was cropped. When you look at the full image, Jack Daniel ceded the center position of the entire photo to the Black man. Now, Jack only took a very small number of photos in his entire life, and he was a walking, talking PR billboard. And even he only had a few photos. It just wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah.
But he took exactly one photo with his leadership team at Jack Daniel Distillery, and he ceded the center position to the Black man. So my question was, why? And then when I got the biography, I said, okay, this isn't someone who was trying to hide a Black man, because let's be real, 1967, and it's a story from the 19th century. If you wanted to hide the Black man, you simply left him out. Right. You have this man who is the most famous whiskey maker of all time. And you have him deciding to cede the center position of the image to this Black man. And then his biography comes out, and this black man and his descendants, his family, are mentioned more times than Jack's own family, which said to me, no, Jack knew what America was like. He was making sure that Nearest and his boys could not be erased, that their legacy could not be forgotten. And in his lifetime, to do that, 19th century, at the top of the 20th century, to be that intentional about making sure that no matter what America went through, that his mentor, his teacher, and his friend would not, and his first master distiller would not be able to be written out of his story, is remarkable. We don't see that with any other bourbon anywhere in this country. Just one.
And I would add to that, he was making sure that there would be a Fawn Weaver.
He was, because he and his family left so many breadcrumbs. So there is only one distinguishing difference between Tennessee whiskey, premium Tennessee whiskey. So there's been some garbage out over the decades, right? truly what Jack was making, what Nearest was making, premium Tennessee whiskey, it's a more difficult, more expensive, and a longer process than bourbon. It's still a traditional bourbon, but it goes through this extra step. Well, the extra step is called the Lincoln County process. It is taking your typical bourbon distillate, running it through sugar maple charcoal. Well, what Nearest and Jack and his descendants made sure was that we didn't forget that process came in with the enslaved people. Once again, you have this family who is like, no, we are not going to take credit for what we did not do. Do you know how astounding that is? We're talking about Lynchburg, Tennessee. And anytime the press asked them the question, back in the early 20th century, they were very clear to put it in the press in writing. This process that distinguishes Tennessee whiskey from bourbon came in with the enslaved people. That's who we learned it from. And then you have Jack and his descendants that are being very clear and saying, no, his very first master distiller, Jack wasn't making whiskey.
Right.
The person making the whiskey was a Black man,
That's
and he
right.
was an extraordinary Black man. So now we finally get to learn his story. But in the process of that, I realized something pretty important. I went with Nearest Green's descendants to see Hidden Figures. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I feel like everybody saw Hidden Figures. Movie was amazing. Spoiler alert, the Kevin Costner role doesn't actually exist in real life. If you ask the studio, they'll tell you it's an amalgamation of a lot of people and go, that means it was nobody and y'all made it up for the storyline. It's okay. I love the role. But we got to the end of the movie. We're cheering, we're hollering, we're hooting and all the rest of that. And we're out in the vestibule area. And I said, I made that sound like a church. Only churches have vestibules, huh? So right. Out in the lobby area.
We relate everything to it. It's okay.
Out in the lobby area, you had myself and a few of Nearest's descendants. And I said, when we do the movie, because at the time I was talking about a book, I was talking about a movie. I said, when we do the movie, it has to be like this. There's two heroes. And at the time, I thought the Kevin Costner role was a real one. So there's two heroes to this story. It's Nearest Green, his legacy, and it's Jack Daniel, his allyship, his friendship, and his determination to make sure that his mentor and first master distiller could never be written out of his history, at least not for any real period of time. They wrote it out for almost 50 years, but now we've put it back. So I'm out there. I'm super excited. Then about 2 weeks later, I was thinking about the film, how incredible it was that they did the film, and realized I could not name the women who Octavia Spencer, Janelle Monáe, and Taraji P. Henson played.
Yeah.
You can't cement. And so from that point forward, I've asked people, hey, who were the people that we learned about in Hidden Figures Taraji P. Henson, Octavia Spencer, Janelle Monáe. Every now and again, they'll go, the main character, she was Catherine. Okay, awesome. What's her last name?
Yeah. And so, as you say that, I'm thinking I can remember it was Catherine. I can remember because I remember the present day images of her. She got the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
What's her name?
Yeah, you know what? See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can't either.
You can't. No.
Right. Do you know Drew? You know her name?
No, all I know is Catherine, and then I get a loss because then I start thinking, well, Catherine Dunham, no, this is the dancer, and then I was thinking like trying to think like what's her last name. I can see the Barbie doll that they made from her. I can see her picture at the White House, but I can't remember her last name. You're so right.
That is so interesting.
So you have all this entertainment, right? But you don't actually have this legacy being cemented. So when I'm thinking about this, I'm going, okay, like literally Nearest Green was one of the founding fathers of this industry, right? And on that Mount Rushmore, if we've got Johnny Walker, Jim Beam, and Jack Daniel, Nearest Green should be up there. But the only reason we're still talking about those three men and we know all of their names is because we're looking at their bottles every day. So it became very clear that if we were going to cement Nearest's legacy, not only did we have to tell the story, we had to make sure that bottles were on the shelves for centuries. That meant that it couldn't be garbage. That meant that it had to be the best of the best. And the reality is whether we like it or not, if you are an African American and you are making a product, it must be better than what has always existed. And what has always existed has never come from us. And so coming into this, I had a benchmark and I said, this is who I currently drink. It was E.H. Taylor, single barrel strength. That was my call at a bar. This is what I drink. And I told the team, if what we make isn't better than this, I will continue to drink this. So I literally laid down the challenge out the gate. So when people look at us and go, how is this brand the most awarded bourbon in the world for 5 years running? Because I knew out the gate we had to be better than everybody in order to succeed.
Because the story
Wow.
make the cash register ring.
Yes and no. It made the cash
the
register ring the
too.
first time.
The first time.
That's right.
The first time.
Right.
So this is a mistake that I see a lot of fellow entrepreneurs make, is that they believe that the story will build your brand. That is not true. The story will be a portion of the foundation of the brand, but people will not buy twice what they did not like once.
Yes.
So Uncle Nearest is successful because we have consistently put out product that is better than our competitors.
You know, I want to talk about what you discovered in the book, right? Because I think I'm interested in the journey that you went on for the investigative process.
Yes.
It's because like our history is so oral.
Yes.
You know, we talked about on the show before how like, you know, I still have aunts who like their birth certificate was like in the Bible.
Yes.
Right. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so in meeting the descendants.
Yes.
And you seem like a woman of great faith in spiritual
without
being.
question.
Like
it's my foundation.
I can feel it. I can feel it.
Yeah.
And I love that. I'm so curious about that journey, the energy of that.
Yes.
Like, you know, what you felt going to the homes of the family, talking to them, you know, just understanding the story from, so like you built this brand, you have this product, but now like you're cementing a real human being and their energy being pulled through the quality, the story, like all those pieces. So I want to hear that part.
Well, the first thing I did was buy the property. So anyone who has ever heard me talk, I'm a big believer. If you do not own the land, you do not own the brand, period. I don't care if it's a restaurant, if it's a bar, if that is not your spot, you don't own anything. You just kind of have something for a time. So the first thing I did was buy the property where Jack Daniel grew up, where Nearest Green was the master distiller, the original Jack Daniel distillery #7. That was the first step, that 313 acres, restoring that property. And every day I would walk those grounds to feel Nearest and Jack who lived there. That's where I began. Because when you walk grounds, I don't know about you, but I personally cannot walk the ground of a plantation. I can literally feel ancestors crying out from under my feet. I can't do it. But when I walk the grounds of this farm where Nearest was the distiller and Jack was a chore boy, which meant he was milking the cows, you know, feeding the hogs slop. Like this was neither one of them had glamorous jobs, to say the least. And when I walk those grounds, it's all peace, it's all love. And so that's where I was able to begin the story, because it was like they were telling me, tell the story, tell the truth, and it's not going to sound like anything else in Black history. And that's okay. But what I understood was, if I'm going to tell the story, and I began meeting with Nearest's descendants right away, and the story they told of growing up in Lynchburg and the respect and the honor that they have always received. I mean, you will talk to Green descendants who will tell you they never experienced racism until they left Tennessee.
Wow.
Never experienced it. Nearest's great-great-granddaughter, Helen Butler, she's now passed away, but she was a truth teller. And when I met her, she was in her 80s, but she was that woman. I'll tell you, the very first thing she says to me, and she's like, did you know all of Nearest's grandsons married ugly women? So she's that woman. She's that woman. And so we were around a group of the elders of the community, and they said, you can't say that. They weren't ugly. And she turns to me and she says, Fawn, they was ugly. They was ugly. Okay. So she was a truth teller. And I remember asking her, what was it like during the Jim Crow era? And her response to me was, I don't know nothing about no Jim Crow. Now, mind you, this is Lynchburg, Tennessee.
Right.
And so I began diving in, and all the story of these Green descendants were like, they would sit at a counter, and this is a very specific example. Mickey, came in and he was sitting at a counter, and it was in Lynchburg. There were two places that remained segregated because they were trying to appeal to the tourists coming in. So they would still hang out, Black and white would all still hang out together. But during those hours when they were trying to appeal to the tourists coming in for the courthouse, they wouldn't let Black people sit at the counter. And so Mickey said he remembers going in, sitting at the counter. He didn't know, he didn't grow up there, but his dad did. And so he grew up in St. Louis. So he comes down, he sits at a counter having no idea. And this white woman comes over and looks really upset when he orders his ice cream. And she's trying to say something to him, but before she could get it out, her manager walks over, also a white man, walks over to her and said, "Do you have any idea who that is?" "That's a green boy." And he got his ice cream. He sat there, he ate it. And until I began uncovering the pieces of this story, he says, I never understood what happened that day. But all they knew is coming into Lynchburg, whether they grew up there or not, if they were a green family member, they were treated with the utmost respect.
Wow.
And so this legacy, so I'm going and I'm interviewing. I interviewed over 100 of Nearest's and Jack's descendants. And when I began this, Nearest's granddaughter was 106 years old. Jack's great niece was 103. Exactly.
Wow.
And so I had this ability to interview people who were in their 90s, in their hundreds, and everybody's story was consistent. And Lord knows they weren't checking in on each other to say, hey, what'd you tell the author?
Right.
No, this was the life they lived. Jack's eldest descendant, I found a photo of Nearest Green, all of his grandchildren, and they were at a funeral. And I was showing it around to Nearest's descendants. And I said, can you tell me who each person is? And they knew who the grandchildren were, but they couldn't point out who each one was. I sent a screenshot of it to Miss Mary Yvonne, which is Jack's descendant. At the time, she was 104. She was almost 104. And she literally said, that's cousin Ott, that's cousin Jesse, that's exactly. So this is the story that I began to dig into. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is such an amazing American story that we never knew about. You're talking about the 19th century where they were able to figure out how to treat each other with love, honor, and respect, being from two different races. And the only thing I can attribute that to, even with all the research I have done, the only thing I can attribute that to is Jack Daniel was always flanked by Black people. So if he's the most famous person, if he's paying all your bills, because his distillery was the one that was the highest paying, if he's the person that everybody looks up to and everybody respects, and he always has Black people around him, you can't be racist in that town. Go find a new town.
Oh my God, we gotta let you go. But I feel like there's so much that I want to sort of just tap into that what you're bringing. One, the book is Love and Whiskey, the remarkable true story of Jack Daniel, his master distiller Nearest Green, and the improbable rise of Uncle Nearest. And it's dropping on what day?
Today.
It
just dropped.
Yeah. Go and get it because it's about to sell out.
Yeah.
It's about to sell out right now. So you need to get to Amazon, your nearest bookseller, and get this book by Fawn Weaver. Let me just stop for a second because I know I got to let you go. I want to acknowledge you and just say, like, not only like coming into the studio, I've interviewed lots of people, but there is such an energy that you're carrying that is really healing like some generations and you carrying the story forward.
Yeah.
And like I can feel that. Like what is vibrating off for you because of what you have discovered, what you have learned, what you have found out, what you're going to share.
It's hope.
It's hope.
Where there's no vision, the people will perish. And we're living in a country in which people are perishing because we lack vision. We lack hope. And the one thing that I will say about this book, yes, it has the historical context. It also has my upbringing and what would drive a person like me to go from, hearing a story to building $1 billion brand. What would make me go all in like that? And you really learn from that, because I truly am a believer that I have gained more confidence from the failures that I have had in life than I will ever from the successes. And so I don't take success, I take it with a grain of salt, because I've learned so much and I've built so much confidence off of the failures. But it's this hope, this through line of hope. Every page in this book, every page of Love and Whiskey, the through line is hope. And in this year, in this election season, especially folks in DC, but all over this country, we're going to need a little hope.
We're going to need a lot.
So I feel like people need to read Love and Whiskey like 5 times to remember that we are our greatest selves when we are our godly selves. And I think that is what you pick up when I walk into a room, because when I walk into the room, there's two groups that are with me. One is God and all of his angels. And the second are I understand that I'm the descendant of the 388,000 enslaved people that made it to these shores, who, in order to get here through the Middle Passages, in order to live, to make it to the farthest destination, the United States, those 388,000 had to be the strongest mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I am their descendants. When I walk through the door, they're with me.
Wow. Well, Fawn Weaver, everyone, I am inspired. I feel an immense amount of hope in general, just by even the work I do. I'm the CEO of Black Girl Ventures. Yeah. And we focus on, supporting women from marginalized communities and just investing and funding and things like that. And so listening to your story, listening to what you're doing with it, and I'm hearing that a movie is coming.
You know it is.
Okay. She dropped out. Okay, we don't. Yeah. But make sure you go out and buy the book today. Right now, you better get your copy first, okay? Because it's gonna sell out. I feel like coming. The remarkable true story of Jack Daniel, his master distiller, Nearest Green, and the improbable rise of Uncle Nearest. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fawn Weaver, for joining me in the studio today.
Thank you.